Welcome back to Nyam News. Ready for it acknowledged? Major conflict is erupting around the world between the older and younger generations. Accusations are being darted at Gen Z, calling them lazy, disrespectful, and even claiming that unwilling to live their lives.
Oh, this broadcast is part of the young generation around the world, but mainly focused on these 5 countries: Korea, Japan, China, France, and the USA.
If you are getting to this debate with someone from the young generation, a common defense argument goes something like, I want time for me. Young people nowadays are more interested in the joys they can get out of life and the experiences they feel they need to be involved in. They value these over components of life that throughout history have proven to be fundamental to human development.
It's presented in books that I've read, novels that I've studied and taught. For example, Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet is all about intergenerational conflict between Lord Capulet and Juliet. So yes, it's been around for many, many years, this idea of conflict between younger and older generations.
I think from a history teacher's point of view, you accept that different generations obviously have different ideas and different views because they've been grown up in completely different contexts. So although I don't fully know about it, if that makes sense, I understand, and yeah, I would expect different generations to have very different mindsets.
This mentality does not only apply to work, but also the world of parenting. Let's get right into our first country, Korea.
In Korea, the ample generation represents the challenges faced by the young generation, with the letter N, including the sacrifices, and Po, abbreviating from Pogi, which means give up. This includes courtship, marriage, childbirth, employment, homeownership, interpersonal relationship, hope, health, physical appearance, and finally, life.
Oh, so gloomy here. Why did they give up everything? To properly understand, we have to look at Korea's economic and social situation.
For the past few decades, the unemployment rate in Korea has increased sharply. Following wages have decreased as the job market became central and competitive. Additionally, Korea has one of the most severe academic rates in the world. Attending academies, which means extra lesson, is very common among students in Korea, according to Asunaro, Action for Job Rights in Korea. The average Korean student usually finish their extra class half 10 at night and finally sleep at nearly 1 a.m. As the job market becomes more chaotic, young people are finding themselves trapped. Companies demand more education and certification. They must compete fiercely and work harder to own a house and secure a stable job. Yet, they are still only receiving a small amount of pay for their efforts.
It's sad to see that some people feel like they don't have the time or money to start a family. They mostly think that having a family where they can't even afford to buy a house is simply impossible.
To make things worse, the media often focuses on the difficulties of marriage and childcare. For example, My Golden Kid highlights the challenges of parenting and provides advice from experts on how to deal with children's problems. Although the show gained popularity, it seems to have discouraged many citizens from ever having children.
In Korea, there is noticeable contrast in mindset between young and old generation. Social media seems to perceive Gen Z as comical when referring to their attitude and way of thinking. SNL Korea is one example.
I have heard of it several times through the news and the social media. My opinion about the ample generation is that actually at first I thought it's quite a funny phenomenon, but I also felt sorry on the other hand because the reasons the young generations give up on numerous things are just because of the Korean society, which is very competitive socially and economically. At first, as one of the old generations myself, I thought that these young generations grew up in very easy circumstances, like they get provided everything by their parents. But I know it's not fair to judge them on my old backgrounds and experience.
Why do people, especially the older generation and media critics, Gen Z? To apprehend their point, we have to explore their background and the lifestyle they're used to.
After the Korean War, citizens experienced the war's impact. The Korean industry transitioned from light to heavy industry like car manufacturing and shipbuilding, boosting economic growth. This influenced the elderly who experienced economic growth as they grew up, believing they could do everything despite the war's destruction.
It's very natural that each generation has a different way of thinking because our backgrounds are very different. There are bound to be differences of thinking, and I think it's quite hard to get an agreement on this matter. But if we try to see more strengths rather than to see weaknesses in generations, I think we can solve lots of social issues.
Government policies should be implemented to ease the difficulties faced by young people, preventing negative consequences like a low birth rate.
As I know, the Korean governments are currently trying to support in different things, but especially for financial support. But I think this doesn't help them fundamentally, since the most important problems they are facing now is the anxiety of their unstable futures. So governments need to support more in reality and from a long-term perspective.
Third generation, a term used in Japan to describe the young generation, is characterized by their understanding of reality, a focus on self-awareness, a lack of material desire, ambition, and hope, which has led to their disagreement towards marriage, children, or romantic relationship.
In a national holiday that celebrates the latest crop of youth turning 20, a Japanese TV show interviewed adults in their 20s. Don't you want to get a nice German car one day? A man in their 50s asked. The young man replied, I'm not really interested. The desire for brand products and luxury goods mostly appears in the teens to the 20s. The Satori generation seems like they don't have any ambition and desires about car, brand name or luxury boots as a suggested example.
To understand, it is important to look back at the country's history. One significant event that greatly affected Japan's economy, society, and culture was the bubble economy, also known as the Japanese asset price bubble. During this time, the market value, particularly the price of assets, faced a rapid increase. The emergence of entertainment culture among citizens has been significant. Anime, idols, and luxury goods have gained a lot of popularity. People enjoy the spare fashion and culture, which means the youth delinquency. The rise of superculture, school violence, and bullying, also known as ijime, has become a major social issue currently in Japan, brought on increase in student suicide rates.
The Japanese economic boom was followed by a dramatic fall in money value, commonly referred to as the bubble burst. People were paid extremely low and unemployment was high. Sociologists and economists referred to this period as a misplaced decade or lost decade. Japanese companies and workers were in desperation to fix themselves up. The Satori generation is unique in that they have never experienced an issue such as this. Unlike their predecessors, their parents were often busy and were struggling to balance work and family life. Additionally, during their childhood, another severe economic crisis occurred worldwide since the Great Depression of 1929. I just mentioned, young people avoid spending money on luxury goods Similarly, with the emergence of young generation, a cheap store such as Daiso has appeared and it is still a famous store among people. However, an extreme spending rate of would indicate that the economy will not functionize as they are supposed to. Currently, Japan's GDP growth rate decreased 4.6% in 2020 already, which is more dramatic than the situation at the global economic crisis in 2008. Additionally, as young people are not interested in marriage and children, Japan will be trapped in an ultra low birth rate, which is already a major crisis in the country as it reached 1.4% of fertility rate. Soon, the Japanese government must come up with reform and policies that will benefit their people to avoid the following consequences.
The unique manifestation of Generation Z in China originates from the country's distinct political and economic culture. China's government is known for being one of the strictest censorship government, limiting citizens' access to social media and articles. As a result, Generation Z in China faces extraordinary challenges, yet they continue to express themselves in their own way.
Recently, there has been a growing trend on the internet called Tang Ping, which started in 2016, but it became more popular last year. And this trend is mainly influenced by economic factors. Firstly, many young people they work extremely hard, but still unable to achieve their targets.
The word originated from one post in Sina Weibo, Chinese social media in 2022, while COVID-19 was altering the world. It was the man in their 20s who wrote this post. This post gained much attention from around the world. The Chinese young adults started to feel relatable and follow the trend of Tangping.
The cost of living is very high, especially in the cities like Shanghai and Beijing, where property prices are too high. Despite earning higher salary, they find it impossible to save enough money to buy a house even after saving for 20 years. So this will demotivate them and make them give up on their dreams.
Chinese people stood up and held a massive demonstration. At least 1,000 people joined in Beijing's Third Ring Road on November 2022 against the zero-COVID policy from the government. Young adults at the riot all were demanding the same thing: a life. During the hardline lockdown that was imposed by the government, many global businesses had left the Chinese market. As a result, the recent job market has been filled with the fierce competition for limited jobs. The size of employment decreased sharply. According to the National Bureau of Statistics of China, it indicated that the youth unemployment hit 21.3% in 2023, which translates to 1 in 5 people being unemployed.
New trend emerged among Chinese graduated students called the zombie style. Unlike the average graduation photo, where everyone smiles, throws a cap, Chinese students stack their bodies to look like zombies nowadays, becoming part of the society and beginning the lifestyle of being an adult and working does not bring them hope anymore. Hashtag zombie style is growing day by day, reflecting the discontent of the young generation.
The older generation thinks this Tangping lifestyle is not responsible to their family. They think that young people should feel sorry for not living up to their expectations, and in the past, the parents work long hours, save money, limit their spending on the entertainment. They strongly believe that as long as you work hard, you will get what you want. Besides that, young people feel that no matter how hard they work, they will never be able to achieve what they want. Finally, they give up and adopt a Tangping lifestyle.
What response did the government make then? In April 2023, the government announced a new policy that promised to expand job employment, including plans to raise wage to ease the tension of the job market. However, the imposed policy was not satisfactory enough for Chinese citizens. The Tangping movement has caused significant issues for China's economy, with many citizens now choosing not to spend money or participate whatsoever in the economy. This has led to notable business and overall negative impact on the national economy, as well as tension and conflicts between the generation. How will China face these difficulties and make the new steps forward?
In recent years, conflict between younger and older generation has begun to spread throughout France due to changed attitude and avant-garde ways of thinking about life. The younger generation has been labeled as Generation Sacrifice, otherwise known as the Lost Generation.
Early in 2023, massive riots erupted throughout the France, rebelling against President Emmanuel Macron's plan to raise the retirement age from 62 to 64. However, the most surprising thing was that this riot consisted largely of college students and student demonstrators who are decades away from reaching the retirement age. The thing is, the French government has already done a significant amount to satisfy people's self-desires when it comes to work. For example, in 2000, a maximum 35-hour work week was introduced. Then, in 2016, France became the first European country to legislate the right to disconnect law, which completely banned employers from contacting employees during the time off. These conditions are what people in so many countries around the world could only dream of. So what makes the French so unhappy?
The French place a large amount of value into their free time. To put it plainly, their mindset is that they work to live, not live to work. But their unhappiness does not only stem from their disaster to relax, but the French economy is also factored into the issue.
A study done in 2022 showing how much French unemployment has increased in recent years. It actually revealed that the 2008 economic crisis has had a very large impact on this issue. This event largely impacted companies and banks not only in France but in all EU member states. More recently, research showed that there is a real lack of options for young people in France who haven't got diplomas. This is one of the main reasons youth employment is so high in France.
All over the world, it is becoming increasingly common for young people to develop mental illness. Is there a result of having more access of resources, having the ability to open with one's mental state, or is there another reason for this?
Obviously, the early 2020s were tough for many with the COVID-19 pandemic and having a causal effect on generation old and young. In early 2023, a study by SPF Barometer was held in France, showing that overall, around 13% of people aged from 18 to 75 experienced a depressive episode during 2021, which is up 36% from 2017. In young adult, people aged from 18 to 24, 20.8 of this age group were affected by depression in 2021, which is a whopping 80% increase from 2017. Young adults are granted so many more opportunities in life. They still have so much to live for and are experiencing so many new amazing things every day. Why is it that these people are becoming so much more unhappy than older people? Enguerrand Duloscat, who is the head of the mental health unit at SPF and was involved in gathering data for this study, stated that social isolation caused by lockdown, uncertainties about studies and the future, and the precariousness highlighted during the pandemic and probably the current anxiety-provoking context, including climate crisis, war, and the economic situation, have weighted heavily on the youngest people. Younger generation in America are being labeled as the generation of financial independence. The reasoning behind this name comes from the way this community views the idea of work.
And I think that a lot of the conflict is kind of manufactured between Gen Z and millennials. I can't speak to like Gen X and above, but I think that when I was a kid and I had conflict with the older generation, it was because I blamed them for like kind of problems in my life, problems in society and stuff like that. And I think Gen Z is smart enough to understand that the millennials weren't really aren't responsible for many of their problems, right? And so I don't think there is really conflict. I think it's made up.
In recent years, trend has erupted throughout the country entitled unemployment, which is pretty self-explanatory. Throughout history, not working was seen as lazy and was generally frowned upon by people, young and old. However, now, Gen Z in America seems to be completely idolizing this lifestyle. It's commonly believed within younger generation that true happiness can be achieved through abandoning the norm and breaking away from the traditional behavior society has adopted. This kind of behavior is now commonly seen in the US, with people beginning to grasp the idea of taking pride in their individuality and independence. Meanwhile, average work and environments tend to be looked over and are perceived as boring. Gap years have long been common in America, which is where people take a couple of years off work or studies to self-improve and take the time needed to discover themselves as well as what they want to do with their life. This will adopt that for certain people. This time can be hugely beneficial and really help people to get back on track. However, labeling this time as unemployment takes away the aspect of self-improvement and implies that this time is going towards entertainment only. This idea of being granted all the freedom one takes away the discipline that young people need at that age, and if overdone, can leave one with the feeling of being lost and purposeless.
Part of growing up is just teenage angst and rebelling against the system and being dissatisfied with the way things are. So I don't think that any advice I gave like the younger generation, I feel like would have to be from the place of a teacher rather than the place of an adult, because adult advice is just going to be obsolete in like 5 years, 10 years.
However, American Sunset has a completely different view on the matter. Fun employment is seen as a way to sharpen one's personal life, which is also considered to be a fundamental aspect of well-being. Gen Z view this time off as productive. It is thought that in order to later on develop a structured work life, first it is essential to build a foundation of personal growth and strength.
Again, I said that the conflict between millennials and Gen Z is kind of manufactured, like made up. And I think that a lot of that is from governments. I think that it is beneficial sometimes to have kind of intergenerational conflict. And I think that generally, at least the people I know that are in Gen Z, students or people who are now entering the workforce and kind of like graduating from university, I kind of get along with them pretty well. There's not like a huge amount of conflict there, so I do think a lot of it's just made up from the government or from businesses and that kind of stuff. So they could stop doing that. It would be great.
If you have similar mindsets to your previous generation, how should I say this? Something would be wrong. I think you always see what your parents' generation and their grandparents' generation have done, and you kind of think about, I'm not going to make those mistakes. You tend to focus on the things that you think are wrong about the previous generations, and you seek to improve it, but effectively you probably just do something different, and that's why people tend to be quite rebellious.
I think, unfortunately, too often governments represent the older generation because they are the older generation, typically speaking. And quite often there's not even a lot of diversity within that group. So I think governments should be trying to, wherever possible, have diversity within those people who are making decisions. Because it's very sad to say that mostly it's a male-dominated place, decision making, and sometimes females aren't even sort of spoken about or considered. Those kinds of things need to be built into our mechanisms of government so that we have much more effective policies that actually include everybody or consider everybody in society rather than just from an older generation.